"I'll give you $1 million. You'll heal me," mocked the millionaire. But then the boy touched him, and something impossible happened. Thomas Weller once had everything. A titan in tech investments, his name inspired awe and fear. But after the accident, all that power sat confined in a wheelchair. The sharp navy suit, gleaming Rolex, and gold cufflinks couldn't cover the truth. He was trapped in bitterness. No doctor, no therapy, not even the most advanced tech could fix his legs. And though the world still respected him, they also pitied him. That was the part he couldn't stand. His fortune, once a symbol of strength, now felt more like chains. So every morning, he rolled himself to the park and sat beneath the oak trees, cursing the sky in silence, cursing the idea of any god people still believed in. That's where he saw him. A dusty black boy, no more than 7, watched him from a short distance. His t-shirt, off-white from time, was tucked into patched green pants. A small gray pouch dangled from his waist, arms folded across his chest. But his eyes, they didn't plead, didn't fear. They simply held certainty. Thomas met the boy's stare and frowned. "What?" he barked. "Need something? There's a soup kitchen downtown." The boy didn't move. He stepped closer, gravel crunching under his bare feet. When he finally spoke, it was quiet but clear. "You're angry because you think no one can fix you," the boy said. "But I can, if you feed me first." Thomas blinked, then laughed, loud and sharp enough to make a couple nearby glance over. "This is too much," he said, chuckling. "Miracle hands, huh? Let me guess. You're one of those TikTok preacher kids? Hidden cameras somewhere?" "I'm hungry," the boy said plainly. "But if you feed me, I'll heal you." "Oh, really?" Thomas rolled his chair an inch forward. "So that's the deal? I give you a sandwich and you do some holy hocus pocus and poof, I walk again?" The boy didn't blink. Thomas narrowed his gaze. "Tell you what," he said, voice dripping sarcasm. "I'll do better. I'll give you $1 million. 1 million, kid." He leaned back dramatically, hand on his chest like an actor on stage. "I'll give you $1 million. You'll heal me," he mocked. "Go ahead then. Let's see the trick." Micah, that was his name, stepped forward slowly. Close enough now for Thomas to notice the dirt on his collar, the way the boy's small hands clenched, not with fear, but patience. What shook him wasn't how poor the child looked. It was how calm he remained, like nothing Thomas said could touch him. "Do you think you're the only one who suffered?" Micah said. "I haven't eaten in 3 days. My mom died on a cold floor, forgotten. I gave away my only shoes to someone who needed them more." Thomas's face faltered. "Just a little." "I don't need your money," Micah added. "I just need you to believe." Thomas scoffed, his smirk returning. "Oh, so now it's a faith thing. Terrific. Of course it is." Micah didn't flinch. "I don't need you to believe in me," he said. "Just believe there's still something good left, even in you." The words hung in the air, heavier than the silence that followed. A squirrel scrambled up a tree nearby. The breeze rustled the leaves gently, but the moment between them stayed still. Thomas leaned forward, his hands gripping the wheels of his chair tightly. "You come here in rags, preach to me about hope, and promise me the impossible?" His voice sharpened. "You don't know what it's like to lose everything." Micah shook his head gently. "You didn't lose everything. You're still alive." That pierced deeper than any insult could have. Thomas's smirk faded again, but he tried to hold on to it. "I've had enough," he snapped. "Go play savior somewhere else." But Micah didn't go. He reached into the small gray pouch hanging from his waist and pulled out nothing, just opened his hand and extended it toward Thomas, palm up, as if offering something invisible. Thomas let out one last mocking laugh. "You really think that's going to do anything?" And then the boy stepped forward and touched his knee. The laugh stopped. Thomas froze. It was subtle at first, a faint twitch, a sensation he hadn't felt in over 3 years. Then came the tingle. A strange, gentle current flowed upward from his calf to his thigh. His laughter dissolved into silence, replaced by stunned disbelief. His hand trembled as it reached down and pressed against his own leg. "What did you just do?" he asked, voice low and hoarse. Micah didn't answer right away. He just looked up at him, eyes steady. Not proud, not smug, just calm. Thomas stared at the boy, his heart thudding against his ribs. He gripped his knee, searching for logic, for explanation. "This isn't real," he whispered. "It can't be." But it was. He could feel it. Something alive. Something moving inside him. His leg was waking up. Micah slowly withdrew his hand. "It's not me," he said quietly. "It's him." "Him?" Thomas repeated, bewildered. Micah nodded once. "The one you stopped believing in." Thomas shook his head, confusion and fear swirling. "No way. It's a trick. Some kind of something." Micah didn't respond. Thomas's voice cracked. "You're lying." Still, the boy stood firm. "You asked to be healed," Micah said softly. "But you don't really want to be whole. You want control. You want answers without surrender." Thomas opened his mouth, but no words came. Micah's gaze never wavered. "Do you know why doctors couldn't help you? Why your millions couldn't fix you?" Thomas's throat tightened. "This wasn't about your legs," Micah said. Thomas's voice was faint. "Then what was it about?" Micah's eyes didn't blink. "You crushed people to get ahead, fired Jordan when his son was dying, left Marcus bankrupt, told your wife to leave because her grief made you uncomfortable." Thomas's hands trembled. "How do you know all this?" His voice broke. "How do you know all this?" Micah didn't answer right away. His silence was louder than words. The wind moved gently through the trees, but between them it was still. "I did what I had to," Thomas muttered, barely able to meet the boy's eyes. "No," Micah replied, softly but with certainty. "You did what your pride told you to." There was no judgment in his tone, no anger, just a steady, unshakable truth. And that, somehow, hurt more than any shouting ever could. Thomas looked away. His eyes burned, but he refused to let the tears fall. "So what now?" he whispered. "You've made your point." Micah's voice was quiet. "Feed someone who's hungry. Forgive someone you hurt. Give, not to sleep better, but to bring others peace." He paused. "Then maybe your legs won't be the only thing that comes back." Thomas felt like something inside him cracked open. But before he could speak, Micah turned. "Wait," Thomas called out, urgently wheeling forward. "Please. I have money, cars, houses. Take anything you want." Micah stopped, but didn't turn around. "I told you, I don't need your money." He looked back over his shoulder. "Someone else does." And with that, he walked away. No bright light, no angelic choir. Just a boy disappearing down the tree-lined path as quietly as he had arrived. Thomas sat in stunned silence. He looked down at his legs, still trembling, still tingling, still alive. He reached for the footrests. His hands moved slowly, cautiously, then pushed them down. For the first time in over 3 years, Thomas Weller rose. His knees wobbled, his breath caught, and he stood. A sob broke from his chest, unrestrained and raw. He wept, not just from the miracle, but from the realization of who he had been, and who he still had the chance to become. 1 week later, a local camera crew stood outside a new building just off the main street. A modest sign hung above the entrance, Micah's Table, a nonprofit center offering warm meals, rest, and kindness to the hungry. It was fully funded by Thomas Weller. But there was no press conference, no ribbon cutting. Inside, Thomas stood behind a counter, no longer wearing a tailored suit, just a plain shirt with the sleeves rolled up, a simple apron tied at his waist. He served food, one plate at a time. He didn't speak much, but for every person who came through the line, he asked their name. And when he handed them their plate, he met their eyes. And every time he felt the floor beneath his feet, he remembered. He remembered a boy with nothing who gave him everything: faith, hope, redemption, and something no amount of wealth could buy: a second chance. That evening, as the last of the meals were served and the sun dipped below the rooftops, Thomas sat alone on the back steps of Micah's Table. The city noise seemed distant. All he could hear was the faint clatter of dishes being washed inside and the quiet echo of Micah's voice in his mind. Feed someone hungry. Forgive someone you hurt. Give, not to sleep better, but to bring others peace. He exhaled deeply, the breath shaky. The tingling in his legs had settled into a quiet warmth now, like a memory of pain slowly turning into something new. He He looked up at the sky, wondering where the boy had gone. Had he imagined it? Had trauma twisted his mind into belief? But no, Thomas didn't need proof. He had stood. He was walking again. And more than that, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. The next morning, he visited Jordan. His former assistant opened the door cautiously, surprise written across his face. "Mr. Weller?" "Just Thomas," he replied. Jordan hesitated. "I wasn't expecting to ever see you again." "I came to say I'm sorry," Thomas said, voice steady. "For what I did, for walking away when you needed help. I was wrong." Jordan studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said quietly. That same day, Thomas reached out to Marcus. They met at a small cafe downtown. Marcus arrived, guarded and distant. "I don't want your pity," Marcus said before sitting down. "You won't get it," Thomas replied, "but you do deserve justice." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, repayment in full, with interest. No conditions, no strings. Marcus opened it, stunned. "Why are you doing this?" Thomas looked him in the eyes. "Because it was never about the money. It was about who I became trying to protect it." They sat in silence for a while. Then Marcus, voice soft, said, "Maybe you're not that man anymore." "I'm trying not to be," Thomas whispered. Over the next days, he visited more people. Quietly, no cameras, no announcements. He apologized where he could, helped where he was able, and listened, really listened, for the first time in his life. Each night he returned to Micah's table, serving food, asking names, remembering stories. And every time he stood on his own 2 feet, he felt a mixture of awe and humility. But Micah never returned. He looked for him, at the park, around shelters, even downtown. But the boy was nowhere. It was as if he had vanished. Until one day, a child came through the food line with a pouch that looked very familiar. "Where'd you get that?" Thomas asked gently, pointing to the little gray bag. The boy shrugged. "Some kid gave it to me. Said I should keep it safe. Said someone would recognize it one day." Thomas's breath caught. He reached out, touched the pouch. "Did he tell you his name?" The child nodded. "Micah." Thomas stood there frozen, his hand still resting lightly on the pouch. "Did he say anything else?" he asked the child softly. The boy thought for a moment. He said, "Don't wait for miracles. Be one." Then he smiled and walked off. Thomas swallowed hard, a lump rising in his throat. He nodded, whispering, "Thank you," and sent the child off with an extra helping of stew. Later that night, Thomas sat in his small office at Micah's table, holding the pouch in both hands. It was still faintly stained with dust, the threads worn and frayed, but it felt sacred now, more than cloth, more than a keepsake, a reminder of what grace looks like when it walks in, unnoticed and uninvited, and still changes everything. He set the pouch on the desk gently, like it might break if held too tightly. The next morning, Thomas met with city officials, not for a press release or attention, but to expand Micah's table. He wanted more than one building. He wanted community gardens, reading rooms, clean beds for the night, and mobile kitchens to reach the ones still hiding in alleyways and train stations. "This isn't a charity," he explained. "It's a second chance, because someone gave me mine." At first, many were skeptical, but soon others began to join. Volunteers, former rivals, even old employees who once kept their distance. Something was different about Thomas now, and people could feel it. One evening, as he was locking up, a woman approached the door. She looked tired, with deep lines in her face and eyes that had seen too much pain. "I used to know you," she said. Thomas paused. "You did?" "You told me once that grief made me weak," she replied. "So I left." His breath caught. "Clara," she nodded. "I didn't come for revenge. I just came to see if the man you used to be was really gone." Thomas stepped closer. "He is," he said, voice trembling. "Or, I'm trying every day to make sure he never comes back." Clara studied him. Then her eyes dropped to his legs. "You're walking?" "Yes." She didn't ask how. She didn't need to. After a long pause, she simply said, "Then maybe you've already started healing." He blinked fast, his voice nearly a whisper. "Can we talk?" "I'd like that," she replied.
sat under the oak trees that evening, the same ones where it all began. No bitterness, no power plays, just two people, broken and trying, and above them the leaves rustled gently, as if the wind itself had something to say. From that day on, Clara came by often, not just for him, but for the work. She served meals, listened to stories, and reminded Thomas of the man he had once promised to be, long before wealth took everything sacred from him. Micah was never seen again, but somehow his spirit was everywhere, in the laughter of children being fed, in the warmth of strangers who became friends.
Micah was never seen again, but somehow his presence was everywhere, in the laughter of children being fed, in the quiet thank yous whispered through cracked lips, and in the warmth that filled the space Thomas had built in his name. The pouch remained on Thomas's desk, untouched, but never forgotten. Some days, when doubt crept in, he'd hold it for a while, letting the memory steady him. One morning, while cleaning the dining area, Thomas overheard two volunteers talking. One asked if he was the same Thomas Weller from the tech world. The other replied, he was, but not anymore. Thomas smiled to himself. He didn't mind being a was. Being different now felt better than being powerful then. Months passed. Micah's table grew. More volunteers joined. Donations came in, not because of flashy campaigns, but because people felt something honest was happening here. They saw change, not in headlines, but in faces, in moments. One cold December evening, a teenage girl came in shivering. She had no coat, no gloves, and eyes that carried too many miles. Thomas walked her to a chair, wrapped a blanket around her, and brought her hot soup himself. She stared at the bowl, then at him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. He didn't hesitate. "Because someone once did it for me." The girl looked down. "Do you think people really change?" "I don't think," he said. "I know." She nodded, and for the first time in a while, Thomas saw her shoulders relax. A small thing, but sometimes small things were the biggest. That night, he stayed behind after everyone left. The lights were low. The hum of the heater was soft. He sat near the back window and stared out into the night. Snow had started to fall. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I still don't understand how you knew, why you came to me." There was no answer, no voice in the wind, but something stirred in his chest, something that wasn't pride or guilt. It felt like peace. Just then, a knock came at the door. He opened it slowly, not expecting anyone. A man stood there, older, worn by time, with a kind smile. "You Thomas?" he asked. "Yes." "I was told I'd find help here. I've got nothing left." Thomas stepped aside, holding the door open wide. "Then you've come to the right place." He led the man inside, helped him out of his coat, and walked him to a table. He didn't ask questions, didn't need to know the man's story. All he knew was that he was broken, and broken things belonged here. Before he returned to the kitchen, he paused, looked once more at the man, then toward the pouch on his desk, and silently he said, "Thank you," to the boy who gave without asking, who healed without condition, and who vanished without applause. Only one part remained of the man Thomas used to be. But now, even that was fading. The snow fell heavier that night, blanketing the city in white. But inside Micah's table, it was warm, filled with the soft clatter of spoons, the murmur of quiet conversation, and the glow of something deeper than comfort, something like hope. Thomas stood by the door, watching people eat, laugh, rest. He took it all in, the way someone smiled after a second helping, how a child leaned into their mother's side after finishing their bread. These were not grand miracles. They were small, silent ones, the kind that changed the world a little at a time. He walked slowly toward the back, his footsteps steady. Every step reminded him of the touch that made it possible. Not a medical breakthrough, not a machine, just a boy. A dusty, hungry boy who had nothing and gave everything. Thomas paused near the desk. The pouch still sat there, untouched, just as Micah had left it. A reminder of what mattered, of what began this all. He sat down, not to rest, but to write. A letter, not to Micah, who might never read it, but to whoever needed to hear it next. To the one who's angry, broken, or lost. "I was like you. I had everything, and it wasn't enough. I was powerful, respected, feared, but empty. Then someone showed me that healing isn't about fixing what's broken outside. It's about mending what's rotting inside. He didn't ask for power, just food, just belief. And when I gave both, something in me changed. This place isn't mine, it's his. I'm just the keeper of the door now, opening it for others the way he did for me. If you're reading this, you belong here. No judgment, no test, just one simple truth. There's still good left in you, even if you can't see it yet. He signed it simply, Thomas. As he folded the letter, footsteps approached. Clara stood there, holding 2 mugs of tea. I thought you could use one, she said with a soft smile. Thank you, he replied, taking it. They sat side by side, sipping quietly. After a long pause, she asked, Do you ever think you'll see him again? Thomas stared out the window. I don't know, but maybe that's not the point. Clara nodded. Maybe it's enough that he was here. Thomas looked around, at the people, the warmth, the life growing in what was once a shell. Yes, he said, maybe it is. As the last light flickered out and the city settled into silence, Thomas stood once more. He picked up the pouch gently, tucked it into the drawer, and turned off the lights. There was no applause, no audience, just a man walking quietly through the dark, toward a future he never thought he'd deserve. And somewhere, maybe far away or maybe just around the corner, a boy smiled, knowing the work was done. A second chance had bloomed, and it had fed many.